Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to start with the very basics in Visual Basic 6. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the start bar down here, and I'm going to start typing in the name of the program we're going to be using, which is Visual Basic 6. You'll see it's came up here, so I'm just going to click on that there, and it's going to open it. Now, the first thing I want to do is create a new project. So this default one here, standard exe, is absolutely fine. So I'm just going to click open, and there we go. So there are two main views in Visual Basic. We have the form view, which is basically the look of our program, a graphical user interface, and we also have a code view. And I can switch between these using the view tab up here. So as you can see here, we've got the code, and here we've got our form. Now, the first thing that I'm going to show you how to do is to use objects. Okay, the Visual Basic is a visual language, so it makes use of various objects that are used for the user to control the program and also to display information. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a wee bit about the form actually. So as you can see here, we've got the form. This is where all our objects are going to be placed. And the bottom right here, we have a properties box. So for whatever object we have selected, we have a set of properties. The first property is always the name of the object, and then all the properties here apply to that specific object. So depending on the type of object, the properties will change. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to expand the size of the form, make it a wee bit bigger. Okay. Now I can also do that from the properties here as well. So if I scroll down here, you'll see that I should have height there, and also I should have a value for width. So if I half that for width, if I say make that about 9,000, you'll see it roughly halves the size of that there. So I can either change it by manipulating the edges, or I can actually change the properties as well. Okay, so the first object we're going to talk about is the command button. Okay, and basically to bring an object in, you just click on the object on the toolbar on the left, and then you left click and drag to draw into the form, or onto the form should I say. Now, this is me created the button here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change a few of the properties. Okay, the first thing I'm going to change is I'm just going to give it the button a different name. So for Visual Basic, what we tend to do is we use a kind of three-letter. We'll use 3 letters at the start of the object name, just to denote what type of object it is. So in this case it's a command button, so we're going to use CMD, and then we're going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it simply start, command start. Okay. Now you'll see it hasn't actually changed the text on the button here, because that's a different property. So now I want to change that property, so I'm going to scroll to, well, I need to scroll because it's right here. I'm going to change the caption property, and I'm just going to change that to start as well. Okay, or even in fact we'll put click here. Okay, and you can see that change is now reflected on the button there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to basically add some code to the command button and get it to change the properties of other objects when the program is running. Okay, which is basically how we get our programs to display things to the user, and how we get basically how we make our changes. So I'm going to use 3 objects today. I'm going to use a label. I'm going to use, which I've just selected here and dragged in. I'm going to use a text box, which I'm going to click and drag in here, and then I'm also going to use a list box as well. And these are all, they're quite similar in some respects, but these are all different objects that we can use to basically display information to the user. Okay, now as you can see here, the fonts are quite small, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on each individual object and I'm going to increase the font size. So I'm going to stick it to, say, we'll go to 23 maybe. Right, okay, that's quite big, but that's fine. We'll just stick with that anyway. So as you can see here, I'm selecting all of the objects individually. They all have a font property, which I can change with the wee dialog window here, and I've increased the font size of them all. I'll do that for the button as well. Okay, there you go. Now, what I'm going to do now is we're going to get all of the objects to display the same message. Okay, and we're going to learn a wee bit about how we do that and the structure that we need to follow in Visual Basic in order to achieve this. So first of all, to actually add code to our button, the easiest way is just simply to double click it. Okay, but actually before I do that, so I'm just going to make sure we know the names of all our objects, because this is going to be very important. So we're just going to call them all display, okay? But we're going to keep the 3-letter beginning, depending on the type of the object. So label, the label here, which is I've just selected, is going to be LBL display. The text box, we're going to make TXT display, and the list box we're going to make LST display. Okay, there we go. Now, so I'm going to double click on my button, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to write a few lines of code that will actually change what's displayed on all 3. Okay, we'll do them one by one. Okay, and we can see it kind of build up. So the first one we're going to change is the label. So if you remember before on the button we had a property called caption that changed what was written on the button. The same is true of the label. So the format that we follow in Visual Basic is the name of the object that we're interacting with, then the property that we want to change, and then the value that we want to change it to. Okay, and again what I'm going to do here at this point actually is I'm just going to go into the settings for Visual Basic, and I'm just going to make it so that it's a wee bit easier to see. I'm going to increase the font size. Okay, and there is a way of doing this. Just need to find the right bit here. Yep, so tools, options, and then I'm going to change the size to say 18 point. That makes it a wee bit easier for us to read. Okay, so you can see now in my code window, text is a wee bit bigger. So first of all we need the name of the object. Okay, and the phrase we're going to make it display is hello world. So the name of the object will be LBL display. The name of the property we want to change is going to be caption. Now to select a property we use a full stop, so we have the name of the object, then a full stop, and then as you can see here it's expecting us to select one of the available properties. So these are all properties that are within the object. So we can just select caption, so you need to type it in. And then the final part is what we want to change it to, and in this case we're going to change it to hello world. Now because we are working with a collection of characters, we're working with text in this case, we're going to be using our inverted commas or a speech mark. Okay, and this is basically our way of saying to Visual Basic that we are dealing with what's called a string, which is basically a collection of characters. Okay, and there we go. So we're now going to test that then. So we're going to run the program, and to do that we can either just click the wee play transport symbol here, or we can simply go to run, start, the program runs. So when we click this button, what we expect to happen is this label caption here should change to hello world, and it does. Brilliant. Okay, now I'm going to stop that there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the text box to echo that. Okay, so again we need the name of the object, which in this case is TXT display. Now the property that we're going to use for the text box is actually text. Okay, and we'll talk a wee bit about this once we run the program. Okay, I'll tell you why you might want to use a text box over a label, because other than the kind of background colour here and the fact this is a kind of border around it, they are very similar. But there is a reason you would use one over the other. So again we're going to click play. Right, when we click here we expect both of these to change to hello world. Oh, that's too many characters there. I'll need to go back and fix that. But as you can see, it has changed. Okay. Now, what you'll notice here is now that the program is running, so we're in basically we're in the shoes of the user. We cannot edit the text on the label. It's set. However, we can go and edit the text in the text box, and that's the main difference. So the text box would be something you might want to use for user input, for the user to type something in, whereas the label would be simply just to display something, or maybe just for a kind of like a label, so for something on the form, and you want to put a label next to it to explain what it is or what it's doing. That's the main reason that you would use one. Okay, so again, stop the program. We're going to go back here. We're going to correct that, and finally, we're going to show you how to use the list box. The list box is again, it's quite similar to the probably more similar to the label, to be honest, in the sense that, well, actually no, more similar to the text box, because the user can select things in the list box. The difference is the list box can contain more than one thing at a time. It contain a list of items, hence the name listbox. So I'm just going to show you this, and what you'll notice is when we run the program, okay, you'll see the difference between, again, the three objects. So this time we're going to use LST display, right? And it's slightly different. We're going to use a property called add item, okay? And in this case, right, we don't actually need an equals. We can just put what we're adding. And you see it's came up here, item is string, it's expecting string, and again we're going to add hello world, okay? So we're going to run the program. Now what you should expect to see is hello world should appear in all three. Now if I click again, what do we expect to happen? Well, it will try and change this to hello world, it will try and change this to hello world. It's going to add another item onto here. So in actual fact what will happen is this will keep adding to the list. Because every time we click the button we run that code and it's going to keep adding, whereas this is going to keep changing them. So it's changing them, but because the phrase isn't changing, it doesn't look like it's doing anything. But it is actually changing them all to hello world. Okay. So those are the kind of main objects you're probably going to be using in most of your Visual Basic projects, at least in terms of what's in the form. And the main kind of learning point of this again today was how we link what's happening on the form to what's happening in our code in terms of our objects. Okay, and the format that we follow, as I said, is the name of the object. So name of object, full stop, property that we want to change, and then usually equals and what we want to set it to. Right. Now, one last thing before we go. As I said, we can get these to handle strings. Okay. We can also use them to carry out calculations as well. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what I mean by this. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our various containers or objects here to display a few things, and we're actually going to be using some operations. We're going to be doing some calculations. So the first one here, in fact, we're going to basically do a wee calculation. We're going to add two numbers together. Okay, so 2 plus 2. Okay, we should hopefully know what the answer to that will be. So we should, we should have get an idea of what to expect. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with the text box, but the difference is we're going to treat it as a string. So we're using our inverted commas again. Okay, and finally for the last one, we'll just do a different calculation. We're going to do 2 times 2. Okay, so in this case 2 times 2, which will hopefully give us the same answer. For a multiplication, we use an asterisk. Okay, we don't use an X like a cross. It's much like the calculator. So if you see, if I just run this quickly, if you look at the calculator on those, you'll see. Oh, okay, they've changed it. Yeah, but in the past, in the old version of the calculator for Windows, you would have an asterisk here, and you would also have a / for the divide. Okay, so that wasn't very useful there. But anyway, just take my word for it. Okay, so we're going to run the program now, and we're going to click the button, and we're going to see what happens. Okay, so we expect 4, 4, and 4. Okay. Okay. Oh, right, yep, I've used an equals here. Shouldn't have used an equals. That was my bad. Okay, so there we go. So as you can see, so we've got 4 for our label. We've actually got 22 for our text box, and then we've got 4 again for our list. Now the reason that this is the case is because when you add a string together, when you add the characters, it just basically places them together. Okay, so instead of actually adding the numbers, instead of treating them as numbers, it treats them as printed characters, and then it just adds them together. Okay, so that is the real main difference in using inverted commas. If you're doing a calculation, if you want to know the value of something and you're using numbers, then you do not use inverted commas. If you are using other characters like symbols or letters, or you want to maybe just put numbers side by side, like in a calculator when you enter numbers in, it puts them side by side, then you can treat them as strings. Okay, so There you go. So I think that's probably, that was our first lesson in Visual Basic, and that is the very, very basics. Next thing we're going to be looking at variables and data types, which is basically how we store values in our program that we can use later. Okay. I hope this has been informative, and I'll see you for the next one.